The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, this is Sharina Garcia, and we're with Wolfsdorf Rosenthal. So we want to thank all our clients for joining us in this town hall. This town hall will be recorded. So if you want to share it with any of your colleagues, please let us know. And if you have any questions, please put it in the chat, and we will leave time for questions. We also have a handout that you can find under the handout sections, and it's an FAQ on the proclamation. So we'll just go ahead and get started. So just a little bit about information about us. I know many of you have interacted with us, but we have partnered with many of our clients on the immigration process. And these are our locations. I know many of you are working with the Oakland team, and you'll get to talk to a lot of the Oakland attorneys and some of the LA attorneys. So just some information about our awards. And this is introductory information about me. I'm Sharina Garcia. I'm a partner here in Oakland. On the panel today, we also have Vivian Zhu, who's a partner based in our Santa Monica office, and she also handles the global portion at our firm. So anything global going outside of the US, visas outside of the US, Vivian is the person we reach out to. This is our team of associates who work on Oakland matters and other Santa Monica matters with the firm. So we have John, a senior associate. We have Meghna, also a senior associate. Nathan, also a senior associate, and then Jasune, an associate. So they will also be speaking on this panel today. So just a legal disclaimer, we want you to reach out to us and ask us any specific questions about your facts. So the information we're giving today is just general in nature. You are more than welcome to ask any questions that you want us to address to the general population today. So John, why don't you start us off and talk about this tool called WRapid?
Sure, yeah, real quickly, we just wanted to give a little overview of WRapid. We use it a lot. We love it. We hope you do too. I know a lot of our clients, HRs love it. So WRapid, whenever we have a case open, employees and also HRs can upload documents securely. They can fill out questionnaires and really enter any data that's relevant, even dependent data as well. So more data we have, better compliance you can have, and we can help with maintenance of status. And you can even check status of your own case. There's a lift a little button, receipt number. Based on the receipt number, it will direct you directly to a USCIS website, and you can check your cases, and you can monitor the milestones of your case status on this page.
So John, does everyone have a WRapid profile?
Yes, so the employees would have it, even the HRs would have their own. And dependents as well of our employees, they do have profile, and it's helpful to put in any like visa stamps, any status documents up there so that we can update in real time and keep the maintenance of their status as well.
So how about if you don't know what your WRapid login is? How do you get that information?
That you can reach out to any of our team members, staff, attorney, and we will have our WRapid team reach out to you, and they can reset the password, or they can remind you of the login info. Any help you need, just shoot us email to any of our staff member, and we can help you.
Okay. And then anything to comment on this page?
Yeah. So, oh, I'm sorry.
Anything to comment on this slide?
Yeah, just that you can keep track of all the milestones as as I mentioned before, and also when you're filling out a questionnaire. This page is about the questionnaire. So when you have a case like H-1B, you will go through these steps and you will fill in the information. And when you get to the end, you have a chance to upload documents securely. And it's more secure than sending it as a PDF attachment in email.
Okay. And then this is just the profile that they can see, right?
You can have a bird eye view of your profile, and it has an easy spot where you can quickly drag and upload any files you would like.
Yeah, so one tip I want to give out to all the employees who are listening or HR is it's really important that you send us your updated documents. When the proclamations came down, we were running reports and we found that many visas had already expired. And so we've been reaching out to clients to get updated data into WRapid. So if you haven't shared with us your updated visa stamp you got last year when you went home for the holidays, please go ahead and log into WRapid and update it, because we will be notified and we can update your records. So we're now going to talk about the latest updates that we've received this week that's caused a lot of flurry with a lot of the international students. So Jusune, can you tell us what's going on with the international students?
Yeah, of course. Hopefully this doesn't affect many of you, but as an update, we did receive a directive on Monday that changes the, I guess, flexibility that we recently received in spring due to COVID-19. This applies to fall 2020, and what we received is basically three things. One, non-immigrant F1 and M1 students attending schools operating completely online may not take a full online course load and remain in the US. We're still receiving, clarification. We expect the CEVP to provide more clarification because there's some conflicting guidance that we received Monday and Tuesday. What can happen to those who are in active status in CEVIS, whether they can stay active if they have to return home to take a full online course. So we'll be updating our website and please check that out. Second, if a non-immigrant F1 student is attending schools that is operating under normal in-person classes, they're bound by the current regulations, which state that an F1 student may take a maximum of one class or 3 credits online. Now, where the real change comes is if a F1 student is attending a school that has adopted a hybrid model, which is one that is a mix of online courses and in-person courses, they'll be allowed to take online courses as long as it's not entirely online. We still need clarification of what will consist of a hybrid, course load, but we'll definitely be keeping everybody updated. The requirements are that, again, it not being entirely online, but that the student also take the minimum number of classes permitted online for their normal progression of their degree program. So this may seem like it's giving quite a bit of flexibility, but it's causing a lot of havoc because the deadline to determine whether this is feasible for a school is August 4th. And what they'll have to do is issue new I-20s for all students who probably already have all their I-20s.
You mean in a month? In a month, Josune?
Less than a month.
UC, all the UCs, all the universities have to issue I-20s for thousands of people by August 4. That's insane.
Yeah, so UC has to issue more than 50,000 new I-20s.
Oh my goodness.
So this is a huge feat, and they have to, reorganize their fall schedule to ensure that there are some in-person courses, and it's difficult because they have to also get professors to agree to go on campus. This is huge. But because it's huge, there are some lawsuits, and hopefully this will provide a temporary injunction, but we'll see what happens, and we'll definitely be keeping everybody updated. So again, please look out for our updates on our website. At this time, Harvard and MIT have already filed a lawsuit, and the University of California has said they will file a lawsuit as well. Schools are, again, having a hard time. They need to find out what's permissible. They need to find out what's safe, right? COVID-19 isn't necessarily going away. The numbers are going up, especially in California. So this is this is something that they have to consider, and they're trying to keep, their students safe, but they're also trying to keep international students here in the US and make sure that they're safe here as well. So we'll keep you updated, but we know firsthand that they're working really hard around the clock, and they're trying to find a permissible system in place to be compliant.
So does this apply to F1 OPT, STEM OPT folks?
No. So OPT, that you have to be working, right? And so as long as you're working, even if that's remote, that should be fine. This isn't, necessarily affecting those. It's affecting those that are attending courses. And so when they're saying, online, the regulations currently are a bit outdated. If I can read it to you, it says, courses that are offered principally through the use of television, audio, or computer transmission, including open broadcast, closed circuit, cable, microwave, or satellite audio conferencing or computer conferencing. So the regulations, like in most cases, are not up to date with current, technology, considering that they included microwave. I don't know how you would take a class transmitted through a microwave, but sure. Now the question is, what's principally provided online? So if you have a course that you meet 3 times online but 2 times in class, what's considered principally, right? If you have to attend an exam in person, that seems, to qualify, along with like some, 2 days or something like that in person. They're still trying to figure that out. I know the universities and other, colleges are trying to be flexible, but also keep in mind, good faith efforts of being compliant. So they're getting creative. The question is, if they are to bring a hybrid course where the students are to meet, part-time, what happens if the state gives another mandate and says that everybody must stay home or everything should be online? What will the, ICE say? What will CVP say? Will they be compliant? Because the schools will have to update their online profile to show that they have changed to completely online. So we're waiting for guidance on that as well, and we'll keep everyone updated.
All right. Anything else you want to share?
Current regulations state no online or distant education classes may count towards students' course of participating in a language program. The directive does say this for an English program, but not for those who are in the traditional, university per se, and let's say they're studying French and they're majoring in French. We haven't received directive on that, and we're looking for clarification. So we'll keep everyone up.
This will mainly affect our clients who have employees who are on CPT or curricular practical training and are doing an internship for the summer and going back to school. So there's a possibility, if their school is completely shut down and they have to do everything remotely or online, that based on this, they would have to go back home. Is that correct?
That is correct. And so the big question for somebody in that situation is whether they would be able to remain active in CVIS. The July 6th directive says no, but the frequently asked questions that was later issued the next day says yes. So
okay, so everything's up in the air. So it's all
correct.
fluid, and you just have to keep checking back in with us. Okay, thanks, Jasune. So now we're going to move on to the highlight of this panel talk, which is the executive orders and the proclamations. And I think it's really, really important that everyone understand the different types of bans that are currently in play. And a lot of these intersect. And so you may be subject to 2 of these bans, or you may be subject to only 1 of these bans. And we're going to go into more detail about that. But there is what we call the health ban, which is the COVID-19 ban. And that ban was implemented by President Trump because of COVID-19 and to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. And so right now, currently, these countries, if you're coming from any of these countries, it doesn't matter your citizenship, but if you have landed and stepped foot into any of these countries, you cannot enter the United States. Okay, so that's China, the Schengen countries, so it's all listed there, the United Kingdom, Ireland, Iran, and Brazil. Okay, now it's really important. People always tell me, well, I'll just go to Switzerland. And I'm like, no, 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 that's a Schengen country. You can't just go to Switzerland. So it's really important you understand which countries are part of this ban. And then there's the secondary ban, which is the economic ban. So President Trump also implemented bans for folks who are processing their green cards overseas. So let's say you have an employment-based petition and you decided you wanted to process your green card overseas. There's a ban on that. Very limited amount of people that are covered under that ban. So it doesn't really usually apply to any of our clients because many of them are pursuing adjustment of status in the US. So it doesn't affect them. The big ban that we're talking about today is the new travel ban affecting certain non-immigrant visas. So that's the main topic of this panel, is folks who are under that ban. And then of course there's a secondary ban, which is for national security. So President Trump also issued a proclamation about certain F1 and J1 graduate students from China who are, using technology that's related and could be part of the military or anything like that to do with China. So, there's a ban on that. We're not really going to go through that ban. So if you have questions about that, please send us your questions. And then there's Nigeria and Burundi. There also are additional border bans. So between Canada and Mexico, if you're going through the border, there are bans to limit non-essential travel. But if you're flying to Canada, from Canada, these bans don't apply. So the non-essential travel ban only applies if you're crossing the border. So Vivian, why don't you tell us a little bit about these COVID-19 bans?
Yeah, so for the COVID-19 ban is that, as Sharina mentioned, no matter what visas you have, if you're a non-immigrant, no matter what nationality you're holding, if you travel from these banned countries, you cannot enter the US. So people are trying to find a reroute or like where they can park for 14 days before they come to the US. So that gets more complicated. So you have to check with the airline first and see if they let you board, because they may have some, like health related requirements. And then you have to check the destination, the transition countries, to see if you can go there. Currently, only US citizens and green card holders and their immediate family members are exempted from these bans. So for example, if you're a US citizen or a US permanent green card holder, you have been to China, you can actually come back from the US. But if
so Vivian, if I have a US citizen child, and even if they're not traveling with me, I can still come back to the US?
If the child is under 21 years old.
So what do I have to carry with me?
The evidence to show that your relationship with this US person. You have to carry that.
So like the birth certificate or the marriage certificate?
Yeah, birth certificate or marriage certificate. And remember, it doesn't, the ban also applies to holders of advanced parole. So if you have filed a 485 and you get the travel permit, you cannot come back if you travel from these countries.
Okay, all right. Should we move to the next slide?
Yeah, Shannon, do you want to stress that, they may get some sort of waivers if you work for, like, as a healthcare worker, for those extreme situations, or if you have like an emergency to travel, you can apply for waivers, and those cases will be considered case by case.
So if I am coming from these countries like China or Europe, I would have to apply for a waiver, right? And then the waiver would have to be approved before I would be allowed to board the plane, correct?
Right. If you have a national interest waiver, or like you travel for emergency, you can apply for waivers from the consulate, the US consulate in your country of residence, and then come back.
Okay. And then let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, so today, most of the countries are only applying inbound bans, like they're not allowing any foreign nationals to travel to a third country. But there are a few countries that are also implementing exit bans, like Australia. So the Australian government has introduced a travel ban that prevents its citizens and permanent residents departing Australia unless they apply for a written exemption in advance. So for this exemption, you have to show that this person is an ordinary resident in a foreign country other than Australia. For example, if you have a H-1B work visa in the US or other type of like residence in the US, you can provide evidence to the Australian government to get this exemption, so they will let you leave. Another example is India. So for Indian citizens or permanent residents to leave India, you have to show that you have a visa to the destination country that's valid for 1 month before you can leave India. Today, most countries are still closed to non-essential international travels. So basically, we're seeing like 3 major categories of those travel bans. One is that some countries are already open to international travel, but there are separate requirements on, self-quarantine, or, the most stringent measure I've seen is that you're required to do a COVID testing no more than 2 weeks before your travel. And of course, this test result must be negative before they will allow you to enter. So UK currently opens up to international travel, but they have quite complicated policies on self-isolation. For example, like in each area, there are different requirements in the Northern Ireland or Wales. Like these requirements are all different. So make sure you check with the airline or check with the UK government website before you travel to UK. And we're seeing some popular tourism destinations are also opening up. Sri Lanka is opening up August 1st, but they have some very strict protocols, such as the COVID-19 testing before travel. And Maldives.
So I guess just a general thing is that if you have questions about traveling internationally and whether you'll be able to enter or exit, it's really important that you check with the airline, and then you can always come and check with us. But usually the best place to look is just looking at the country website and the country conditions. So let's move on to the current proclamation and how that is handled. So thanks, Vivian, for sharing about the travel bans for COVID-related issues. So Meghna, do you want to share with us about the current proclamation?
Yes, so this current proclamation, I'm going to refer to this as the non-immigrant visa ban. So this is, we've been getting a lot of questions from our clients about this. So this is the proclamation that came out on June 22nd. And basically, it suspends and limits the entry of any individual seeking entry pursuant to any of these visas. So H-1B visa, H-2B visa, a J visa or a L visa, and any dependents. So a lot of people ask, well, how can the president do this? Like, how can he just, like, what's his authority for doing this? So, there's the INA, which is Immigration and Nationality Act. There's a provision in there that basically says that the president, by proclamation, he's allowed to suspend the entry of any aliens or any class of aliens, whether as immigrants or non-immigrants, or he can put restrictions on their entry if he finds that the entry of those people will be detrimental to the interests of the US. So basically he has huge discretion when it comes to, protecting national security or economic security of the US, or if there's like a health pandemic such as COVID, he can use those reasons to restrict entry. It's harder for him to, touch you if you're in the US. He has to go through, more stringent requirements to do that, but he has kind of unlimited authority to prevent entry. And that's what he's doing. He's using the economic interest that, we're in a recession right now and he doesn't want new workers coming in and affecting the labor market. So that's what this NIV ban is all about. So if you look on the left here, these are the visas that are not impacted by the non-immigrant visa ban. So if you're on any of these, then you don't need to worry about the non-immigrant ban. So you can look at it, but basically anything on the left is not affected. The ones that are impacted are the H-1B, and then if you're a dependent of an H-1B, so that would be H-4. If you're on an H-2B, if you're on a J-1, which is a exchange visitor program, the J1 scholars and researchers and doctors are okay, but if you fall into any of the other J1s, like a au pair or a camp counselor, those types are impacted, but not scholars, researchers, and doctors. If you're a dependent of a J1, so that would be a J2, or if you're on an L1A, L1B, or you're a dependent L2, then you are impacted.
Okay, so who does this travel ban actually apply to?
Yeah, so these are the 3 prongs. I just call them A, B, and C. You have to meet all of these, and then only the ban applies to you. So you basically have to meet A, B, and C. You'll see that "and" there. That's very important because in order to meet A, B, and C, you have to meet all, right? If you don't meet one, then you can't meet all 3. So it's important to go through this and see if you can cancel any of these out. And if you can, then the ban doesn't apply to you. So we'll just go through it. So the ban applies to you if you are A, outside the United States on the effective date of this proclamation. So I'm not going to keep saying effective date, I'm just going to use June 24th because that's the date that it was effective. So if you are outside the US on June 24th and you do not have a non-immigrant visa that's valid on June 24th, and you do not have an official travel document other than a visa, and I'm just going to say advance parole because that's what applies to most of our clients. An advance parole is basically if you have an adjustment of status pending, then we'll also apply for an advance parole, which is a travel document. So if you have an AOS pending, you might have an advance parole. So if you I'll just, instead of reading all this each time, I'll just say advanced parole. So basically, if you're outside and you don't have a non-immigrant visa and you don't have an advanced parole, then you are banned from entering the US.
Okay, so who is exempt from this travel ban? I think this is Nate. Is this you?
Yes, I think so. Yes. So piggybacking on what Meghna said, you go through those 3 items to see if it applies. Then you can also look to exemptions to see if you can get around this travel ban by being exempt in one way or another. Lawful permanent residents are exempt. Spouse or child of a U.S. citizen. Any individual seeking to enter the U.S. to provide temporary labor or services essential to the food supply. Any individual whose entry would be in the national interest as determined by Secretary of State, Homeland Security, or their respective designees.
So what's the definition of national interest?
Sure. So national interest is can be determined by Department of State, Department of Labor, Department of Homeland Security, and the factors that they're supposed to look at in determining what is national interest is whether somebody's entry to the U.S. is going to be critical to defense, law enforcement, diplomacy, or national security. If someone is involved with provision of medical care, if someone is involved in medical research at U.S. facilities to combat COVID-19, and if someone is entering to facilitate the immediate and continued recovery, economic recovery of the U.S., that's a category that opens up some areas for creative arguments. And And we don't know how this is going to be applied and implemented everywhere, but certainly if you can make an argument that what you're doing is essential to the economy, it's creating jobs, it's maintaining jobs, you have room to argue at a U.S. embassy or consulate that you should get an exemption from this ban.
But I think everyone needs to know the standard is quite high. It's quite high.
We can assume, yeah, based on implementation of this and planning conservatively so you don't get stuck abroad, yes, you should assume that the standard is going to be quite high.
Okay.
And finally, children who would age out of eligibility for a visa due to the proclamation, they can also get an exemption. So the place to go and argue this, if you're abroad, you don't have a visa, you need to apply for an appointment at a embassy or consulate. You get an appointment, you go and you present your evidence as to why you think you're exempt. It's going to be up to consular officers to determine if they think that you meet the qualifications for an exemption.
Okay, so this slide is about, does a travel ban apply in my situation? We're getting a lot of questions about what is a valid visa. So I think everyone needs to understand that what we're talking about is look in your passport and do you have a visa stamp with your picture in it that is still valid, right? So if it's an H or an L or a J1, type of visa, like, is it still valid in your passport? So look at that, the visa stamp in your passport, and that's what we're talking about when we're saying visa. Okay, so Nate, you want to just quickly go through these so we can move on to the next slides?
Sure. So the language of the proclamation is a little confusing. So we included these statements to try to make it as clear as possible, the situation, which is, as I think this will apply to many on the call. So if you or your dependents are outside the U.S. and have a valid H-1B, H-4, L-1, L-2, or J-1, J-2 visa stamp in your passports, you are not impacted by this travel ban as long as you return before your visa stamp expires.
Okay, we're going to go through some examples, right, on this. Yep. So, so why don't you just talk quickly about the second and third point so we can go through the examples.
Sure. If you or your dependents are outside the U.S. and have expired H-1B, H-4, L-1, L-2, or J-1, J-2, only the impacted J-1, J-2 programs, visa stamps, then you are banned and will need to wait until after December 31 to return to the U.S. If you or your dependents are inside the U.S. and your H-1B, H-4, L-1, L-2, or J-1, J-2 visa stamps are expired, you should not travel internationally for the validity of the travel ban, so until December 31. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to obtain a new visa, and you're not going to be able to enter the U.S. unless you meet one of the exemptions.
Okay, so let's go through some real life scenarios really quickly. So John, can you let me know if an employee is in Korea and has an H-1B visa stamp in their passport, so it's valid, can he re-enter using his H-1B visa stamp?
Sure, because he has a valid visa stamp, he doesn't need to apply for a new one, so he's exempt. He can come in as long as the visa doesn't expire. And we know that Korea is not banned, does not have any health bans, so people can enter from Korea into the US.
Okay, so let's talk. Okay, this one's a little bit more complicated. So you have an employee who's in the US in F1 status. So they actually have an F1 visa stamp that's still valid. So these NIV bans don't apply to the F1 visa stamp, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so they have an H-1B petition that's been approved, and they had chosen to approve it under consular processing. The reason being they wanted to utilize as much STEM OPT time as they could, so they had designated for consular processing. They had planned to go home to China and then apply for the visa stamp or later. So can this person get an H-1B visa stamp at the consulate and re-enter in October?
Unfortunately, no, because the proclamation applies here where they don't already have the H-1 visa yet, so they cannot apply for a new one. And we have to keep in mind China as well. There's a health ban as well.
Okay, so does the answer change if her services will be in the national interest?
Yes, if they can show that their work as H-1B worker is in the interest of the U.S. National interest. If they can meet that hurdle, then they could apply for it. But again, if it's in China, there's health ban, so they might have to do another waiver, go through another waiver for the health ban as well.
Okay, and does the answer change if she's traveling to Taiwan and wants to return before October 1, 2020?
If she wants to re-enter just in F1 status, just using the F1 visa stamp and just return, then yeah, absolutely they can come back in. And we know that because Taiwan does not have a health ban from the US.
Okay, so she'll come back in from Taiwan in F1, but she's not on H1, right? So
Exactly.
because later she's going to have to go pick up the H-1B visa at a later time when possibly all these COVID is gone. So does the answer change if instead of filing consular processing, she had chosen change of status effective 10/1/2020?
Well, since that's already approved, it's set to automatically take effect on October 1st, right, from F1 to H-1B. In the meantime, she can travel, not to China. It should be like Taiwan, Korea, somewhere where she can re-enter. But she has to make sure that she comes back before October 1st, because remember that's when
because otherwise, then she has to apply for a visa stamp after that date, right?
Exactly, and the proclamation applies. She won't be able to.
Okay. All right. So, Meghna, can we talk about employees Canadian currently in Canada wants to return to the U.S. on an L1 visa, does not have a visa because she's visa exempt. Can she re-enter?
Yeah, so Canadians are special because they don't need visa stamps in their passport. So what Sharina was talking about, like in your passport, you have your photo and then the visa. So Canadians don't have that in their passport. And it's clear that the proclamation doesn't even impact Canadians. So as long as you have underlying valid status, so whether that's you have an H-1B approval notice or an L1 approval notice, as long as you have that status and you're Canadian, you can come back into the US.
Okay. And then the second scenario, so the employee is Indian and is currently in the US with a valid H-1B visa stamp that expires in November 2020. The spouse is in India and their H-4 visa stamp is expired. Can the spouse apply for an H-1 visa and re-enter?
So unfortunately, the spouse, that slide we talked about, you have to meet A, B, and C. So, since the spouse, she's outside the US, right, because she's in India, so she meets A. She doesn't have a valid H-4 visa stamp in her passport, so she doesn't meet B. And she doesn't seem to have an advanced parole from these fact patterns. So since she meets A, B, and C, she's banned. So therefore, she's not going to be able to apply for the H-4 visa, and then come back in. She meets all 3 prongs.
So the family will be separated, essentially, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, unfortunately, like a lot of our clients are emailing about this, where the spouse and kid is in India or abroad somewhere, and this proclamation it's going to have this negative consequence that it's going to lead to family separation until at least the end of this year, unless you can meet one of the exemptions. Which in this case, it doesn't look like she meets any of the exemptions.
So can she come back on her B2 visa? She has a valid B2 visa. So can she come back on the B2 and then file a change of status to H4?
Yeah, we're getting a lot of these questions too. So a lot of people are saying, well, B2 is not impacted. It's on that left side of that slide, right? So they're like, can the wife come in on a B2? And then once she's in the US, can she file a change of status to H4? So that seems like it's permissible, but we do not recommend that approach, just because the CBP officer or the consulate, they're just going to say that the wife is trying to find a loophole and, get around the proclamation, and she could be liable for misrepresentation. And if you misrepresent, then you could be permanently barred from coming back into the US. So even though this seems like it should be okay based on the face of the proclamation, because B2 doesn't apply, but we do not recommend doing this approach. So please check with us before you do anything like that.
Okay, thanks, Meghna. So, Jasune, can you talk about the status of the consular posts, and are the government offices opening? Oh, I guess Jasune's not there. Uh,
Sorry.
oh,
Hi there.
yeah.
Mute. Okay, so really briefly, consular, appointments are available at some posts, but they are canceling, as you can probably guess why, COVID-19. And because of that, there are only visa appointments for emergency basis. And the standard, as Sharina previously said, for a lot of these exemptions or emergency appointments is pretty high. And policies are local, so they vary, even from city to city here for the local USCIS offices that are starting to reopen, and consulate to consulate. So even in the same country, for example, in the United Kingdom, London differs greatly from Belfast. So there's different procedures in place, and as everybody said, the situation is quite fluid. So we're taking it, situation by situation and just trying to be as flexible as possible to get our clients in and meet all of the requirements that each different post has for us.
Okay, what's going on with the local offices, the USCIS offices? Is my adjustment of status stalled? Like, what's going to happen with my H-1B extension? Like, is anything affected because of COVID and the government closures?
Yes. So H-1B extensions should be processing as normal, but because officers are working from home, we are expecting, delays. But surprisingly, we have had some H-1Bs approved relatively quickly. But adjustment of status, we have seen offices bypass the interview requirement and proceed with approving it without the interview, whereas some we do understand that they are just waiting for the offices to reopen fully to start scheduling those.
So sorry, I'm interrupting you, but
No.
how is it going to affect, I read all these things about furloughs and USCIS or DHS going to furlough thousands of employees. How's that going to impact the processing of cases?
So August 4th is another deadline, right? If Congress doesn't pay. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So August 4th is another deadline. So if Congress doesn't get the money, they will be furloughed, and it's quite a bit. And that's going to affect, because if the adjustments still require interviews, well, there's not going to be enough officers to interview every single foreign national that is applying for a green card here in the US. So we will expect further delays. At this time, the interviews were taking anywhere from 8 to 14 months. So this has been, again, another fluid situation that we're taking day by day, and we'll keep everybody updated, but hopefully, they find a solution.
So I'm going to wrap up because I want to leave time for questions, because I think people have a lot of questions. So this is our remaining slide that we want to share with you. And the questions, we will be asking you when we're trying to determine whether you're subject to the various travel bans. So remember, there's the health COVID ban, and then there's the non-immigrant visa ban. So were you in the US on June 24, 2020, the effective date of the proclamation? Do you have a valid J1, H1B, or L1 visa on June 24, 2020? Do you have a valid advance parole document? And are you not traveling or transiting through any of the countries, China, Iran, Brazil, United Kingdom, Ireland, or the Schengen countries? So those are typically the questions we will be asking to determine how the ban applies to you. So this is our email. If you have any questions, you can certainly email us. Now I want to move to the questions, but I'm not quite sure if I can actually see them. So I only see one question. Does valid visa mean valid visa stamp? And I think we answered that already. So yes, it does. It means the actual visa stamp that's in your passport. So if someone else can see the questions, if you could just read them off, and then we'll have the panel answer them.
Sure, I have some questions that I can read off.
Sure.
A lot of this has to do with the F1 stuff, but will remote learning have any effect on H4s? So no, at this time the directive is for F1 and M1.
So if I'm on H4, it's not affecting me. So even if I take classes completely remotely online, my H4 status is not affected. I'm still maintaining status.
That's correct.
Okay. Do you have another question?
Does it mention affecting F1 visa holders on OPT? Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, go ahead and answer, Justine.
Okay, OPT is not mentioned. This only, again, directs schools on what needs to be completed for those taking courses. So again, what, means online courses and whether they're compliant and whether they can stay in the US to complete those courses or not. Nothing about OPT.
Okay, so if you're on OPT or STEM OPT, you're fine as long as you're maintaining your employment and all of that information, right? It's only
Yes.
directed to those who are still in school requiring to take a full course load of studies to maintain their F1 status.
Correct.
Okay, I have some questions now, so I'll read them.
Okay.
So my 4-year-old son, who is a U.S. citizen, is stuck in India along with my wife, who does not have an H-4 visa stamping. Can she get a visa and come back because my son is a U.S. citizen? So who wants to answer that question?
I think Mark does the answer on this. So, it depends which ban you're looking at. So, if you're trying to get around the COVID ban, then having a U.S. citizen child helps you. But unfortunately, if you're trying to get around the non-immigrant visa ban, then the U.S. citizen child is not going to help. So unfortunately, it sounds like your wife is outside. She doesn't have a H-4 visa stamp. And so she can't really apply for the H-4 even though you have a U.S. citizen child.
So basically, she will not be able to apply for the H-4 visa stamp until after December 31, 2020, when the proclamation ends. So
Correct.
This is one of those sad situations where families will be kept apart. So despite the fact this person has a U.S. citizen child, it does not help them because the wife or spouse does not have a valid H-4 visa stamp.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what about the perm part of the proclamation? I have a valid I-140 from 6 to 7 years ago. Does that affect anything, John? John, are you there?
Unfortunately, that I-140 is not really relevant, if you will, to the visa ban. So it would not help that person to say if they don't have a visa stamp, like H-1B visa stamp, it's not going to help that person somehow be exempt under the proclamation.
So I think this is a separate question. So the perm and the bans, no relation. No relation, right? There's no relation. Valid I-140, no relation. So nothing that we're talking about is about green cards. Okay, so if it's a perm or an I-140, nothing we're talking about is about a green card. Okay, it's really just limited to, can I apply for an H-1B, L-1, J-1, J-2 visa currently between now and the end of the year? Okay, and the answer pretty much is no. So we are telling all our clients that this is our advice: between now and the end of the year, if you do not have international plans, that's the best thing for you. Cancel any international plans, just stay put in the United States. Okay, if it really is urgent that you must travel between now and the end of the year and your visa stamps are expired, you really need to talk to us and help us advise you.
Serena, I've got a question that it falls into that same vein.
Yeah.
I am a Canadian citizen working on H-1B that is valid for 2.5 more years. I don't have a stamp as I am Canadian, and I did not travel. I just have a valid I-797 document. Can I travel to Iran until December? So as I think Meghna covered, as a Canadian citizen, the proclamation ban does not apply. No need for a visa stamp, so that ban doesn't apply. However, just asking, can I travel to Iran or X place, I'll refer to the advice that Sharina just gave. If you don't need to, it's probably safer not to.
Well, he's banned. This person will be banned from coming back from Iran because there's a COVID health ban.
That's right. Traveling to Iran or traveling and transiting through any other countries that are subject to a COVID-19 ban will prevent you from re-entering the U.S.
So even the fact that you're Canadian, it doesn't mean you can travel, because the problem isn't the fact that you're Canadian and you're on H1 or H4 or L1 or L2. The problem is the fact that you're going to a banned country, Iran, China, Schengen, UK, Ireland. That's the problem. So the only way to get around that ban is if you do go to Iran, you have a US citizen, child, or spouse, so you can get that ban waived for you, the health ban. Okay, so that's a very important distinction. So you can kind of see how complicated it is. There's all these different bans that we have to think about when we're advising clients. Does anyone else have a question you want to ask, or I'll just go through the questions? Will USCIS continue to process Form I-140 or I-485 after furlough? So,
Yes.
Jasune, yes?
Yes, we just expect delays due to the, loss of workforce.
Okay, so this is the other question that's related to the perm part and what they're hearing about the proclamation. There's a lot of buzz in the news that President Trump is trying to change the rules and the regulations, and he's meeting with all the Department of Labor, Department of State, Department of Homeland Security. And one of the things that's out there in the news is making everyone redo their labor certification, right? So, John, that's not in play, right? That's nothing we have to worry about right now.
Right now, no, because it's going to take some time for it to actually be implemented, because it's unlike how Magna said, President Trump has a lot of power restricting entry, right? He has that power. But something like perm labor certification, things like that, that's by regulation. It's going to take some time to actually pass through the House, Senate, blah, blah, blah. So right now, nothing we can do, or nothing that needs to be done as of now.
I don't think you need to worry about it, is what John's trying to say, right? Like all the things he says a lot of things, okay? And the things that are materializing are the things that he can control, which is entry to the US. So folks who are actually in the US, and this is why we say, please stay in the US, because he can't affect change that way without regulation, going through all these regulatory review requirements, House, Senate, all of that. So it's really important that, you stay put in the US, your extensions are not affected, your change of employer petitions are not affected, premium processing is still there, we can still file adjustments, we can still file I-140s, we can still do all of that. Okay, so here's a question. My petition is valid for 20 more months, but my L1 visa is expired. Is it possible to renew the visa in the US once the visa ban will be released? So anyone on the floor want to answer that?
I'll
So
take
they're
that
asking
one.
about, yeah.
Sure. So the answer is no. A visa cannot be renewed from within the U.S. You can apply for an extension of your status with USCIS within the U.S., but the visa stamp you have to apply for at a U.S. embassy or consulate abroad. And if you've got one expired, the Trump proclamation prevents you from traveling and renewing it and re-entering before 12/31.
Yeah, so I think it's really important you understand, again, the visa stamp we're talking about is the one in your passport, and you can only renew that if you visit a U.S. consulate abroad. And right now, all the consulates are closed, so you can only get an appointment by expedite, and the consulates will not entertain you right now if you're trying to renew an HL or one of the impacted non-immigrant visas that we talked about.
Unless you can get an exemption, unless you're the health
Yes.
worker,
Yes.
essential to the economic recovery, but again, high bar probably.
Yeah. So are holders of visa categorized as not impacted? Are there any travel restrictions placed on them at all? The answer to that is yes, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think what's really important that you understand is, remember, there are many different bans. So you still have to look at the COVID-19 ban. Are you coming from China, Iran, Brazil, Schengen, UK? Okay, so it's really important, even if you're not impacted because you're not on H or L or any of those, you still have to worry about the health bans. Okay. Are change of status applications getting delayed? So, Meghna, can you answer that?
I mean, it depends if, it depends on which service center we filed at. Right now, we're actually seeing cases actually get approved quicker than usual, which is odd. So right now there doesn't seem to be any impact.
All right. And
if I could just add, California Service Center has been recently saying it's going to take many more months, but that might be because there's a kind of reopening, reshuffling things. It'll probably go down.
Yeah, like we filed one at California and we told the client 14 months, but then it got approved in a month. So
there we go.
Yeah, but I don't think we can really, it's all fluid. So, please don't get upset at us if we say a month and all of a sudden it's like 14 months. Wish we had a crystal ball, but we don't. So we can only give the best advice.
We're actually seeing delays in the producing of the cards, like the EAD and AP cards. And the word is that they have fired contractors who would produce those cards. And so the USCIS officers now have to produce the cards on their own. So that's why the cards are delayed, but we still get the approval notices. It's just not the plastic cards.
Yeah. So Nate, I'm going to ask you this question. I just joined another company. I got an H-1B transfer approved. I did not get an H-1B stamp for the new company. Is my stamp still considered valid?
So assuming here there's a valid stamp from the previous employment and valid as of June 24th, the effective date of the Trump proclamation, you can continue to use that stamp to travel and re-enter the U.S., notwithstanding the proclamation ban. Doesn't matter that it says your old employer's name on it. You can still use it with the caveat of make sure you're not traveling to a COVID-19 banned or transiting through a COVID-19 banned country. And, the general warning, if you can avoid travel, we recommend it. We don't know where additional bans are going to pop up. If that happens while you're abroad, you could be stuck abroad. So
yeah, and then the other important thing that I have to tell everyone, which we always see, is you must show your new approval notice with your new company, with the new employer. We see so many I-94s that are cut short because the CBP officer will only give you validity until the expiration of your visa or the validity of your prior H-1. So super important that you carry that. And then also if you have dependents flying, also have them carry a copy of your new I-797 for the new employer. So
I have somebody asked a question here.
Yeah.
My wife has both F1 and TD visa, which is TD visas dependent of a TN spouse. The last time she entered the US, she used her F1. If her classes are going to be 100% online, will she have to go back to Mexico and then re-enter the US with her TD visa? So yeah, Josuna, do you want to talk about that one since you're handling F1s?
Sure.
F1.
So you can do a change of status to be a dependent on your TN.
It looks like the wife already has a TD visa though.
So again, if we don't want to have to travel, right? So does not have to travel to Mexico. You can file a change of status here in the US. But if you want, there's a lot of things to consider. Right now, there's no specific travel ban, but there is a requirement for land border crossing to Mexico that it has to be for essential travel. So that's another thing we have to consider. And if you're going to fly, that's better. And if she has a valid visa, she can try to re-enter. But again, there's a lot of moving parts. Things are quite fluid. And so no, she does not have to travel. She can file a change of status. But if she would like to travel, there's things to consider. We can definitely assist with that.
And then if so, are there consequences to her F1 visa when she wants to apply for her OPT in 2021?
So she would have to be in valid F1 status to be eligible for the OPT at the end of the program. So the end of 2021.
Yeah, it's very complicated. Like if you're switching from TD to F1, you have to work with the school to go back on the F1. They might not allow you. So, if you're really going to plan to do that, you really need to talk to us and also your international advisor. because it can get really complicated and you're going to lose out on your OPT. So super important that you talk to us. So I'm just going to drag it out for a few more minutes because we kind of started late, so we can answer some more questions. How long can we work after an H-1B is expired if the H-1B extension petition is submitted? So, Justina, you want to answer that?
Sure. Hello?
Yeah. So how long can you work after your H-1B expired if the H-1B extension petition is submitted?
I think she's cutting out. I can answer it. I think I can't hear Justina. So basically, if you have an H-1B, your H-1B is expiring, you filed a timely extension, meaning you filed it before the H-1B expires, then you can continue working for up to 240 days, as long as that extension is still pending.
Okay. So I'm on an H-1B with no stamp in my passport and I need emergency travel. What are the options or procedures?
Hi guys, I think I fixed this. Sorry about that. So I'll try to tackle this one. So emergency travel, definitely talk to us. We would love to assist you with that. There's, again, a lot of moving parts. We'd have to contact the consulate or embassy, see if they can even allow you to schedule an appointment, then ask for an expedite or emergency. And then we also have to consider all of the respective travel bans and see how those would affect you.
So using using a real life example, I had somebody who was on H-1B, didn't have the visa, but there was a death in the family, so it's emergency. So this was Korea, and they were able to grant the appointment within, I think, a couple of business days. So he flew after he got the confirmation. On the same day when he went in, they didn't do any biometrics or anything, gave him a H-1B visa stamp because it was an emergency death in the family. He had to go. So that's one good scenario.
Was this after the proclamation or before the proclamation?
This was, that's right. This was before the proclamation. So
yeah,
now
I think that's
the
a big
proclamation.
distinction. Yeah, I don't think it's the same rules now. So after the proclamation, I think it's a much higher standard. So you really, really need to talk to us because you're going to have difficulties coming back in and getting that visa stamp. So Nate, here's a question for you.
Oh, sorry.
I'm in adjustment of status now and I have a valid advance parole. Can I fly by direct flight from USA to Moscow, Russia, and then come back to the States from Moscow, no transit through any Schengen country?
So if you've got a valid advance parole document, then you're not subject to the June Trump proclamation travel ban. Russia is not currently subject to a COVID-19 ban, although cases are picking up there. So I suppose it's possible that one could be instituted. With that caveat, I guess you should be able to go to Moscow and return with advance parole, although, we recommend caution.
Okay, so I'm gonna, we have like 3 more questions, which we'll go ahead and answer. So John, I have an H-1B visa, which expires in May 2021. When is it advisable to apply for the extension?
H-1B status or the visa stamp?
I'm not sure, but I think you should just clarify the distinction and what that means.
So, for me, it helps to think like visa stamps are like tickets that lets you travel and re-enter travel to the US. So visa stamp can expire because H-1B visa stamp does not control your status here in the US. So, the I-797, the approval notice, that's what controls your legal authorization to be an H-1B worker. So as long as your H-1B status in the US has not expired, then your visa stamp can expire. You just need a visa stamp to be able to travel and come back to the US.
So how early can I apply for, I don't care about my visa stamp, I get it. How early can I file for my H-1B extension renewal if it expires in May of 2021?
You can, the earliest you can apply for extension is 6 months prior. So if I get back, November of 2020.
Okay, and then just a couple more questions.
I see a good one here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Came to me. I don't know if you can see all of them, but some of these came to me. So This is a good one. If you're working for a non-government, meaning a private sector company working towards mitigating the pandemic, does that count towards the argument of national interest? So I don't think the proclamation has anything that says it has to be a government nonprofit or something. It can be a private employer. You just have to be able to make that argument that you're coming in, you're involved with providing medical care to people who have COVID-19, or you're providing medical research at a facility to help, combat COVID-19. And, like Sharina said, the standard is really high, but I don't think you're precluded just because you don't work for a nonprofit.
Okay, this is a
I
good
agree.
question. Yeah, it does it. But this is a really good question, and this is what we want to discourage our clients to do. So if my wife is in India without an H-4 visa, can she apply for a B-2 visa and travel to the US meanwhile until the travel ban is lifted? So, Jasune, can you answer that?
Yeah, of course. So we would like to emphasize that a B2 visa is to come here as a tourist visitor, and you have to have the intent to enter the US for a temporary, stay, maximum 6 months, to be here as a tourist or visitor. So that being, coming here to reside with their H-1B spouse doesn't really align with what a B1, B2 would allow a foreign national to do. And so that would be trying to circumvent the travel ban, and that can cause a lot of, serious issues where they may decide that, this is a misrepresentation.
And I think one of the big things we need to tell you is that the government is not friendly. So when you do things like that to circumvent the ban, they could instigate removal proceedings, permanent bans. So really, they know that people are going to try and do this. So if you're going to do something like that, you are really risking the future of your spouse's immigration ability and ability to come in and out of the US. So we can't emphasize that enough. Okay. Do we have any other questions? Otherwise, we're going to wrap up. Does anyone have any other good questions they want answered before we wrap up?
I've been getting a lot of questions. I was like, I think I sent them privately, responded. Maybe that's why I didn't show up. But a lot of people are worried about perms. Again, proclamations do not affect perm. We're still continuing to do perms. And if you're in the US, like Katrina emphasized, you have less to worry about. So perms are not affected.
Yeah, perm is still ongoing. We are still moving forward, testing the labor market, proving there's no qualified US worker. So perm is not affected. Those are still ongoing. Jasune, any last questions you have that you want to answer?
No, but somebody did give me insight that microwave here probably means the site radio communication using micro wavelength radio waves.
Ah,
Cool.
so funny. That's so funny. Nate, any last minute questions you want to answer?
Nope, we've answered the ones that showed up for me.
Okay, how about you, Vivian?
Yeah, I answered too.
Okay, Meghna?
Yeah, I don't have any more.
Okay, so I know this was quick and fast. We did the best that we could. We tried to reserve as much time for questions and kind of ran over. But we're always here for you. If you have any specific questions, you can always reach out and ask us any of your questions. But this has been recorded, so if you want a copy of the recording, please reach out to us. We also provided a handout, and as I leave you today, the number one thing I want to tell you is please do not travel internationally unless you really, really have to. And that's my parting words for all of you. So thank you, everyone, for joining us in this town hall, and have a good day. Thanks to our panelists. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.